Minister, I welcome the opportunity to open this debate here this morning on an issue that is front and centre in the minds of the vast majority of the Irish population. Issues around asylum and migration, legal and illegal, have now politicised and woken up entire generations that were detached or indifferent to the political process. Entire communities are now alert to the policy trajectory in this area, and what they are seeing frightens them. These communities feel an absolute sense of loss of control. They feel that even their most peaceful efforts to ask questions, to raise concerns, are being framed as borderline criminal and as a stealth form of cultural anarchy. We have some Gardaí who are wondering how normalised community relations can return in the context of an expected influx of between 15,000 and 20,000 international protection applicants annually over the next few years. The EU Pact we will attempt to debate here today is indeed the result of a long and contentious process. Some see that as evidence or confirmation of the allegedly democratic nature of the agreement. But that presupposes the existence of European Union structures that actually cares about what ordinary people think. And that, Minister, is a highly debatable contention. If anything, the EU and its endless procession of directives and regulations have smothered democracy in this state. And we know this because, as one of your own MEPs put it, at least 70% of Irish legislation now comes from the EU. We are in effect a colonial outpost of an EU regulatory empire whose sole function in many regards is simply to transpose those EU laws while giving the process of a veneer democratic legitimacy. Nowhere is this seen more clearly than in this pact. Does this pact contain some useful principles? Yes, it does, and we all want more effective processes. None of us, I hope, support the idea that our country's generosity should be abused or trampled upon under the guise of some mistaken concept of political virtue. But the crux issues, Minister, revolve around the cost. What is the cost politically? What is the cost in terms of the constitutional principles around sovereignty? What is the financial cost? What is the social and cultural cost? There is an old saying, Minister, that the cure must not be worse than the disease itself, and that is a sound principle in all areas of life, not just in political areas of life. In light of that, I genuinely feel that this pact, when seen in the round, will make things worse for Ireland, and that is my only concern. It may, through its so-called solidarity mechanisms, support EU member states such as Italy and Greece, but what will be the overall impact on Ireland and on our people? I'm here to stand up and give voice to the concerned Irish people. The majority of those people have made their feelings known in poll after poll that government has refused to listen to. And I'm here to put those views first and foremost. We have all been here before, of course. We all remember the endless chatter about the importance of EU solidarity mechanisms during the financial crash of 2008. But tell me, Minister, who ended up on the hook for billions when our so-called EU partners forced us to bail out the EU banking system? Who is still paying the cost for that 16 years later? We are. I say this not to rehash history. I say it because it's incidents like those that should alert us to be ultra cautious whenever EU elites bang the solidarity drum and expect us all to get in line. Well, some of us won't get in line because we have the interests of the Irish people first and foremost, and we deserve to have those interests respected at all times and not our sovereignty and our voice stifled. I say this, as I say, Minister, because it is of concern. It's of concern to so many people, the majority of people in this state. Minister, this week alone, we have all seen ample evidence of how handling over our immigration policy to the EU has stymied any chance of resolving such issues bilaterally with our neighbours in the United Kingdom. They will not assist us in returning asylum applicants because they say they will only deal with the EU as an entire entity and not us individually. This demonstrates the unwieldy and frankly stupid policy requirements at work here. Requirements that we will be embedding even further on acceptance of this EU Pact. We have also seen reports from Fionn Sheehan that Minister McEntee is not receiving support from government and that she is being hung out to dry. In that regard, I'm reminded of what Winston Churchill once said. The opposition occupies the benches in front of you, but its enemy sits behind you. This points to the disarray and the division between government and its own members on this very issue, not to mention the Irish public. For the better part of 2 years, we have unnamed government TDs expressing their rising anger and frustration at the level of government disconnect on the asylum issue. Why aren't those voices being heard? Indeed, 22 months ago, I told Minister Darragh O'Brien here how one Fine Gael TD described the UK's Rwanda plan as a train coming down the tracks that we had no way to stop. What has happened since that time, Minister? What has the Minister been doing in that time, in the 22 months, to try and address this issue, which was entirely foreseeable? Because your own government TDs were saying that it was going to happen, and sure enough it is happening. Why is it only that in the last week that the issue has returned to sour Irish-UK relations? It is clear to everyone that this government is a government desperately searching around for a scapegoat upon which it can load the sins of its own incompetence and lack of action. We have seen through FOI data obtained by Gary Kavanagh at Gript Media that even your own officials were expressing unprecedented alarm at the proposals that would have destabilised our entire immigration system. Those concerns may have been part of a scoping exercise prior to the referenda, but it is undeniable that officials within the department have significant concerns around decisions or agreements that remove their capacity to act with discretion. We will find out in 6 months' time, I'm sure, when another FOI request goes in, that your officials are also expressing horror and alarm at the impact of the EU Pact. But that's not correct, and that's not right that that should be the way. Will you tell us now if the immigration units of your department have expressed some concerns with this pact? The people need honesty. They're asking for leadership. They need to be able to trust this government, but unfortunately there's a lot of mistrust. Minister, one understanding of what a pact is that it is a covenant between people. But what I'm hearing on the ground, however, is that the sacred covenant between this government and the Irish people has been broken, and there is no trust left. People do not believe what you are saying. You talk about listening and consultation, however, your actions say otherwise. Your MEPs have the gall to tell people that protecting our borders and talk of sovereignty is now far-right rhetoric. It is not. On this, and as on so much else, Minister, the government is now bankrupt of whatever political capital it had to bring people with them. We need to opt out. But we also need a general election to allow people the opportunity to opt out of your mandate to govern. And the sooner both of these happen, the better.
Thank you, Deputy.